So good to be back and to see each one of you. Grateful for just that wonderful spirit of that the Lord brings to us when we gather together in His presence and just for His honor and His glory. I appreciate all of you that were involved in Vacation Bible School and just all the things that God did in and through that. I'm excited to hear more about that. I guess I don't know if I'm saddened or excited that the building looks back to normal. Saddened that I didn't get to see it firsthand. Seeing it on Zoom is just not quite the same. Excited because I didn't have to do anything to put it back. That's anyways. I want to give you an update just on our trip. I know that we were able to be with you on Zoom through or last Sunday during the early service. It is definitely not the same being with you. It feels like I'm just speaking to a computer for the most part. I can see everybody about yay big in the little distance. So I couldn't tell if y'all were laughing or crying at the things I was saying, but trust that it was making some sense for you. Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 20 was the verse that the Lord gave me when we left prior to leaving and in preparation for this trip. Now unto Him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us, unto Him be glory in the church by Christ Jesus throughout all ages, world without end. And so what I want to share with you this morning is essentially how the Lord answered that request or answered that promise for us while we were there. Before I get too far into my slideshow, though, I do want to give opportunity to my family for them to be able to say maybe just something quick. That way it can, as you get through the pictures and you see some of the pictures, maybe it will give a little more meaning behind some of the things that they said. So, Jaden, you want to start? Just stand up. There you go, and kind of turn a little bit.
Paris was really cool. We far surpassed what we wanted to do.
Don't tell them this.
But it was really cool. I prayed for a country, Russia, that we would reach to them, and someone got Russia. So.
Yeah, it was great. I prayed for an athlete, and we met a boxer from some South American country. I can't remember what it was. And the food's awesome. I like the food.
Sure.
We were in order anyways. Probably my favorite thing was actually getting to meet the people at the church there in France. It was really cool to see that there's other people around the world that are serving Jesus too, and just getting to meet them and connect with them was really awesome.
All right. Let's see. One of the challenges, other than like the initial, culture, learning to ride the metro and stuff, would be the people, like, and I know that's why we're there, because there were so many people, but I could not describe to you how many people were there and the crushing crowds. And like, usually when you're in a city, like, you're rushing with them, right? Like, you're trying to go to someplace. No, we were trying to go against the crowds or stand at the corner to like hand stuff out. And like, once we got learned how to do it, it was great. And like you said, we met our goals. There were so many people from different countries. And that's why we're there is a great thing. But for me, it was like a challenge to like take a breath and not be stressed that there were 1,500 people trying to be in that personal space. But it was great. One of the things for me was it wasn't any specific big prayer or anything, but it was every day. So we had morning devotions and then prayer time and testimonies and singing. We usually did that twice a day, like morning and evening debrief and initial meeting in the morning. But every morning we prayed. Different people would pray for different things, and every day, like a few hours later, we'd see that prayer answered. So it was just really cool to see how God worked in the little things with our house and with the group never met a couple people from Lehigh, but hadn't really met any of the group before, but we all worked really well together, and no one complained, and we just had a really good time and saw a lot of prayers answered, so it was great.
Okay, this trip was a milestone for our family. Ever since my husband and we had our kids, we had always said one day we want to take our kids on a mission trip. It's really part of our heart was to just impart to them the heart behind missions and help them to see the needs. And so we've kind of been waiting all these years, and we wanted it to be a good experience for everybody. So that's why we didn't do it when the kids were younger, because we wanted everybody to enjoy and survive. So this trip, when it came up, we had talked originally. Pastor Warner had said no children under 14, which is kind of the reason that we held back from signing up to go. And then, of course, after my husband talked to Pastor Warner, he said, "Oh, well, if the parents are going to be there, you can bring your kids. They're your deal." So of course he just didn't want to be responsible for kids, understandably. So I was really grateful, and I think that just to have our whole family together, even as we were leaving and flying out, and past mission trips, as a mom, there's just that party that's torn when you're leaving your kids behind. Even though I always left them with grandparents and people that love them, and I knew they were going to be taken care of, there's just something about leaving, part of you behind. And so this trip was really amazing, because even as we were at the airport leaving, my husband and I just kind of looked at each other and we said, "This is great. We're all together. We don't have to think about, what's happening back home, because everybody's here." And Jesse he's not up here so I can say this. Jesse was really kind of the star of the show. He just endeared himself to everybody, and honestly, there was one particular day, and maybe you're going to mention this, but there's one particular day we were just really exhausted coming back from the metro. And just kind of a side note, the metros were the hardest part for me, because we did all public transport there, so it was train, metro, and bus. But the metros was just hordes of people, and that's when you had to be careful about pickpocketers. You were crushed in with 100 other people, literally. They don't have the same hygiene standards as we have in the U.S., if I can just put it that way. And so, sometimes the smells were just overwhelming, especially at the long end of a 90-degree day. But, there was one time we were coming back really late on the metro, and we were just exhausted, and we get off at our metro stop, and as we're going out the exit, he goes, "Guys, we need to go on this exit, because this is the side of the street we want to be on." And this is Jesse. And of course, my husband and I just looked at each other and we're like, we have no idea if we're supposed to go left or right. I mean, one side of the street. And sure enough, he was right. He knew exactly where we were supposed to go. So for those of you that worried about him, he was fine. And the other thing I'll just mention briefly, because I know several people talked to me about safety. I felt completely safe there. In fact, we kind of had an ongoing joke that every place that I was put for handing out tracts on a street corner, literally there was police across the street or behind me, standing directly behind me or across the street from me. And at times there'd be groups of 20 or 30, because the police presence was very heavy. There was a lot of security with the Olympics going on. And I never had a negative interaction with them. In fact, we actually handed them out tracts and talked to some of them, throughout our interactions. But I always felt safe being there. We were out late at night, often coming home from the metro, and just different things we were doing. And so safety was that. But I think for me, the blessing overall was, again, our goals being met as a group, which I'm sure my husband will talk about, and then just the fact that we were there ministering together, and just the flexibility. And I just saw my kids rise to the occasion. And so I was grateful for that, because sometimes you wonder, are they getting it? Are they learning what you're trying to teach them? And I hope that, again, our heart behind taking them was that they would get the burden for others, that they would see other churches and other people that need the Lord through that. So.
All right, so let me, in the next 35 minutes, take you on 12 days of mission work, all right? Again, keeping in mind, here's the verse that the Lord provided us with in preparation for this trip. Let me see if this thing's going to work. All right, so we left on Sunday, July 21st, 2024 at 22:45. We're starting to get used to that, brother, with that military time, because that's the way they all tell time. But a couple of the things that we saw the Lord do just in that was just the safe flight. We had an early arrival because we had a 90-mile-an-hour tailwind behind us, pushing us to Paris. So I said, Lord, you must really be in this. You want us to get there and get there quickly. It always makes for a better flight, too, when you're early than not. No lost baggage, and some of the issues the other groups ran into made it even more meaningful for us, and even the seamless travel. This is this is us before we left Dulles. That's at the airport. Let me see. Philip, is this thing going to work, you think? The blue light is flashing. There's the plane seating, looking around. Now we're going to try. There we go. Nope, too much now. All right, now we're good. Okay, there we are arriving in Paris. You can see there was these signs all over the place, Paris 2024. These were our little comfort signs because it was English. And we could always look for the pink. And whenever we were trying to get somewhere, that pink Paris 2024 kind of helped us to be able to get there. This is a missionary that's currently there in Paris. He's been there for 3 years. Spent the first year or two learning the language. Now they were anticipating the Olympics coming, so he had helped with a couple of different groups. And thankfully, Pastor Wartner kind of was able to make contact with them. And so he met our family at the airport, giving us the metro tickets and helping us on our first metro ride from the airport to find our house. So he's a real blessing in that sense. He had some other groups coming in, so he didn't do a whole lot with us after that other than helped us with a planning session and trying to just look and see where we should be going to hand out tracts. But pray for that guy and his family, Kyle, and I don't know exactly how to say his last name. It's, I think, Guins or something like that. But the Lord's using them right now in that country of millions and millions of people. So we trust the Lord will continue to bless their ministry. Once we got there, then it was a matter of settling in. And again, seeing some things that the Lord did for us. We were able to establish a home base. And I don't know that we really had planned on this, but the way it worked out is the house that we were, that the Lord led us to rent through Airbnb situation became the headquarters. And it actually worked out really well based on the location from where it was. The other groups were a little bit further south of us, so the one metro stop or a metro stop and a little tram ride. And so everybody would meet at our house in the morning and then back in the evening and then disperse from there. And so that helped us. We got in there a day early. So the next morning I was up early heading to the airport to meet them and then to help them to get back to our house where we could store their luggage and wait for them to be able to check into their places. Also, we were able to feed them. But this was our first night. That just gives you a little idea what it was like, right? He's tried to fall asleep in the right position, but that didn't work. I said, Jesse, how in the world did you end up? Well, my head kind of went here, and then I don't know, Dad. I don't know what happened after that. But anyways, in the kitchen, cooking and prepping meals and getting things ready for the group that was coming. And then you can also see a little bit here all the track preparation that we had to do. There was the tracks themselves. These were chick tracks, and that was another blessing for them. Pastor Wartner had contacted them looking to get some tracks. He asked for, was it 30,000 or 30,000 tracks? They accidentally printed 40,000, so they sent all of them over, 40,000 French tracks, and then several thousand tracks in other different languages. I figured we had 15 or so different languages, and they gave them the tracks to us free. So we didn't have to, nobody had to pay for any of the tracks that they shipped them to the pastor there in the country, and he delivered them to our house, and then we prepared them from there. In addition to the chick tracks, we also had a card that Pastor Wartner had printed up himself, and that card had 4 different languages on it, and it had a QR code for the website, and it was phrased in the way of finding hope. Finding hope. So we were able to use those cards also, especially for English speakers. We didn't have any English tracts. They didn't arrive, but we were able to use those cards, and in addition to everything else. So some of the foreign tracts we ended up stuffing with those cards. The French tracts also had the QR code printed on the back of it, so they were able to access that. Some of the planning, organizing things, just trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening, and being ready for the actual time of outreach. Then we also got in some touring while we were there, and this it kind of helped. It gave us some time together, gave us a little bit of a bonding, especially for the overall group coming from 4 different churches. And but we were also able to see, not only in Paris but also in London, some of that early Christian history that helped form some of what we know today, and certainly some impact that we received from that. Some of these pictures, you can see the Olympic venue. If anybody watched any of the Olympics, you might have recognized a few of these places. Obviously, the Eiffel Tower being an iconic landmark there. This was John Wesley's church. Just some pictures again from some of the places that we were able to be. To say that we walked a lot is an understatement. That does not do it justice. Some people had those little step counters on their phones and stuff, and I didn't hear anybody finish a day without at least 18,000 steps. Most of the people said we were walking 8 to 10 miles a day while we were there. So whenever you had a chance to sit down, it was kind of a needed thing. But there's, I think that was Buckingham Palace in London. They wouldn't let us pass the bars for some reason. I think it was because Judah and Jaden looked suspect. This was John Newton's church there in London. We got inside. I think I mentioned that last week about we sang Amazing Grace in the church. It was just our group in there at that particular time, and so we felt the freedom to be able to sing, and I think we sung at least 4 verses of it. Big Ben, another London, just all sorts of old structures and buildings and places that we were able to view while we were out and about going, and things that we were able to see. This one, I believe, was I think this is this was a Catholic church of some sort. And our last day of outreach, we were very close to this particular building, and they were having a mass of some sort in I think the Filipino language. But later, Jesse and I came walking around the front of this, and they actually had some Catholic young adults out that were witnessing and trying to share Christ and give Bibles out and things of that sort. So Jesse and I were able to stop and talk with 2 of them for a while and kind of challenge them on some of the things that the Bible says regarding salvation. And then one night we stayed out long enough to see the Eiffel Tower sparkle. So it does it on the hour for about 5 minutes once it gets dark. So that was an enjoyable time. Then we got into the evangelism. I'm sorry, before we get into evangelism, the Evangel Baptist Church. I don't know exactly how to say it. When they say it in French, it's a little bit different. It is a Baptist church, but it's either evangel or evangelistic or evangelical. I'm not exactly sure which one. So I just put Evangel Baptist Church. This is us heading over to that. Again, everything happened travel-wise in the metros and the trains. But this is the pastor of all names, Pastor Baptiste. So that's pretty fitting for a Baptist preacher, right? And Pastor Wartner and him were conversing together. This is inside their church. Some of the people. And then this is us. We got to sit back inside the kitchen area, which is at the very back of the church, but it had windows. Would be kind of like for a cry room, but they had the windows taken out. And then they had an interpreter back there that was able to interpret the message, the testimony time, and things of that sort for us. Then the church had a fellowship, a meal. And also this church was a real blessing to us throughout the entire trip because they provided several meals for us. They had folks actually deliver them to our house, and we were able to serve them to the group. And so that was something that wasn't really expected, but something they just took on themselves to do as kind of just a generous gesture towards us for being in their country, trying to evangelize. We also were able to leave the rest of the French tracts that we didn't pass out. We were able to leave those with this church. And several of, or I should say not several, but 3, 4, 5 or so of the church members actually came out with us at different times while we were doing outreach. And for most of them, they told me that that was the first time they'd ever done that. And so it was a real encouragement to them, but it was also hopefully a spark for them because now they have tracts, and now they said, well, we can go do this. We can reach out. And they were a little bit further south of Paris, probably an hour-ish or so away from the main city, and most of them, I think, were, they looked at Paris like we look at D.C. Stay away as long as you don't have to go there, right? And so for them coming to Paris, some of them, it was even the first time they were really at some of those things and in some of those areas. But just a sweet time of fellowship as well as outreach together. Sitting there waiting to eat. And one thing I was thrilled with is there was a lot of young people at the church as well. This church had been started by a Baptist missionary, I think they said 50 or 60 years ago. And right now it's the pastor that's been currently has been there for about 8 years. And so they have a good group of people. And just pray for them. If you would, there are not a lot of churches there in Paris that are preaching the truth. And so we want to see this church really succeed. I asked him if they had started any other churches. And he said, every time we go to start another church, we get so much opposition that it takes us a while to recover. And they said they haven't been able to actually get another church started. But the last attempt, he lost several families. He said good, solid believers, church members. He says they end up getting sideways in the situation. And he says it comes with such great opposition. But he said we still desire to do that. So pray for them if you would in that. And then the outreach, and all I can say is people, right? Kind of what Kara said. This is just getting out on the street, again, riding the metros, getting there to where our destination was. We usually split up into 2, sometimes 3 groups. This gives you a little idea of the crowdedness of the metro, okay? Because this area is probably no bigger than just this back corner of the stage, and yet most of our group is stuffed inside of there. Now, they were having a good time with it at that particular moment, but it was very cramped in that. You can see all the people in the background. I don't know what kind of picture that is or what Judah's doing, but trying to act, some of them just being funny. These are some of the guys from, let's see, this guy. I found Darrell's brother. Now he speaks French, and he doesn't know anything about him. But oh look, Darrell, I found your brother, man. I was sitting there talking to this dude, and the first time I met him, I thought Darrell had come to Paris. I was like, I know you're not him, but man, you remind me of him. I mean, just a real sweet spirit guy, soft-spoken, just real enthusiastic about getting out. Huh? No, he wasn't. The other guy was. The first guy that came out was. But just a real blessing. Him and I did some outreach together, a couple different days, and but pray for this. He he allowed us to call him Joe. That was short for what his name really was because it was a French name. But pray for Joe's wife, if you would. His wife is lost. Joe's been saved for about a year now, and been married a couple of years. So he got saved after he got married, and so his wife is, him and his wife are kind of a little bit at odds at the moment just because of the salvation and church thing. So pray for him. This guy here, he came with us several days. His parents are kind of missionaries. They're Afrikaans, came out of, were living in South Africa, but they've been living now 16 years or so in Paris. And they work through another ministry, I think Campus Crusade for Christ or something like that. And again, this guy came, he's like, I've never done this before. Okay, well, great. Get out here and do it with us. And he was real encouraged by the situation. Another guy, Elam, his family brought us some food one night. His mother is from Portugal, and so we had some Portuguese food one night. It's really good. And their family actually is in Portugal for the month now. And so he took all of our extra Portugal tracts that we had, and he said he was going to hand those out while he was there in Portugal. So pray for that guy as well and his family. But just a good time with these folks as we were able to minister together. And also it was great to have an interpreter on the street with you. Because once you ran into some of those folks that wanted to speak French, you just... sorry, here you go, that kind of thing. And sometimes that was a blessing because I don't know that they wanted to really, converse with me as much as maybe argue with me. This is another guy that came with us, Tanner, very, very outgoing fella, and really was able to speak to a lot of people. He was kind of one of those guys that didn't care what anybody else thought. He just found them, started talking to them, and really admired his courage and boldness in that. I think this was the day he was with my group, and I think he sat and talked to this young man for 30, 45 minutes or something, just sharing the gospel with him on the street corner there. There's a picture of just a little bit of the glimpse of the crowds that we were able to get into and hand out tracts. This was at an area where there was the rugby arena. And so when the rugby games were going on, there would be a group, once they finished, there'd be a group coming out, and then there would be another group coming in to get into the stadium for the next group of games. And so that one particular point, we had them coming and we had them going. There was several that were receptive to the tracts, and then there was a whole lot more that weren't. A very difficult country. And some of the ones, obviously, that were receptive, when they realized what it was, then they would reject it. But we did come across plenty of folks that genuinely seemed interested in what we were doing and the message that we were preaching and proclaiming. And we trust that, the Lord knew who He was working with and those that were open to His working. And we hope that we got to those particular ones while we were there. This is just a couple images of folks that we handed tracts to that were already reading them, but we had to be very discreet about getting those kind of pictures. So I'm sorry the pictures aren't the best, but hopefully it gives you just a little idea what we did come across. This is to the guys from the church there. They were talking with another guy. I didn't quite get all of that. But a lot of times on the metro rides or in the subway stations, they're just sitting there. And so we were able to give them something that they could read while they were doing that. And it was neat to see them in that. This was the one I think we mentioned last week, the very first day, opening day of the ceremonies. My wife walked across to ask directions from a cameraman and turned out getting interviewed by Japanese television. This was the lady that was doing the interview and asking the questions and things, and so that was kind of a neat little experience. A lot of police officers, military, even from other countries. Ran into a lot of police from other countries. We were in the park one day, and I met some, where were those police officers from again? Colombia? Was it Colombia? I think they were from Colombia. I met 3 police officers. They weren't in uniform. I didn't even realize they were police officers. And at first they wouldn't take the track, and then I saw them a little bit later down the road, just talking to them and said, what do you do? And then I was able to explain to them that I was a volunteer chaplain for the police force. And he said, oh, you're a priest for the police, a priest for the police. I don't use the word priest, but something along the lines of that. But at first we weren't exactly sure what to do with the police, as far as, we kind of wanted to, stay under their radar, because we didn't know exactly how they would react to us being there handing out tracts. But we kind of realized as we went on that we were able to just hand them tracts as well. In fact, I don't think I have the picture, but there was one picture that was shared that was 3 police officers reading the tracts, and each one of them wanted one and wanted a different one, so there were several of them that were receptive. I think Karis got run out once by 3 times. Karis got run out 3 times. I don't know what it was, but she had one police officer kind of tell her, you can't do this, get out of here, or wait, what group are you from? She said, I'm from my church, Victory Baptist Church in Frederick, Maryland, if you want to call Pastor Morrison and complain about it. But we just would move different location or something in a different spot and just keep on going. But it was just so many people that we were able to meet and connect with, hand tracts to, speak with. Obviously English, there's a lot of people that do understand English. This particular police officer that I gave a tract and a pin to, he told me his girlfriend was from Vermont, of all places. So he spoke pretty good English and directed us. On the street corner, passing out tracts. Judah, did this lady take one or not? She's looking at it. She's trying to figure it out, which is what we got many times is, what is this? What are we trying to do? What are you trying to give us? A lot of people thought we were selling them. So we had to try. A couple people attempted to learn the French word for free so that they could do that. This is Jesse and Jaden. They handed a tract to a guy down in the subway area, and then Jesse went on to explain to him all the things that he could about the track for the guy, and so the guy was pretty appreciative. This was a Slovakian gymnast teacher or coach that we met one of those opening days, and this was the Monaco ping pong or table tennis, they call it. He was a player at one time, but now he's a coach, and so we were able to connect and meet him as well. But we were so grateful for all the people that the Lord brought across our path. And I know sometimes we focus on the highlights, and that's what I want you to hear and what you want to understand. Obviously, I didn't take too many pictures of people rejecting, or some of the looks that we got, or some of the trash cans, waste baskets that were around us that were full of the tracts. But I believe those people will still be held responsible because somebody gave them an opportunity to hear and to read. We were, even on the way, we left on Friday, even as we were leaving, we still were paying attention to who was around us. And we met a couple of countries that we hadn't met the whole trip. Was able to speak to a news reporter group from Cuba and give them a tract and a pen. They were very appreciative, gave me a pen back. This in the airport, we saw these 3, and clearly they were athletes. Turns out they were from the Slovakian shooting team, and so they were heading to a different area, and we were able to exchange some pens and some tracts with them and get a picture there in the airport with them. And this, I'm sorry for my wife's eyes being closed, all right? The guy's wife took the picture, and this is the only picture she took, all right? But this was one of the U.S. athletes that we actually met. My wife met. I was praying for them, but the Lord allowed Jaden and my wife to meet them. So I believe it still counts though, right? My wife and I are one flesh, and Jaden's part of my family. So he was part of the U.S. shooting team as well. And they were heading to one of the other events. I mean, obviously a little bit hard to tell that he was, but my wife struck up a conversation and asked them who they were here with. And the wife said, my husband. And, oh, yeah, my husband's on the shooting team. Oh, okay, got it. So just kind of a neat thing. In fact, we really did meet quite a few Americans. I forget, we didn't keep track of every single state, but I think we had over half of over half the country states that we were able to connect with different people from that.
Where was he from?
Kansas. Yeah, I believe we figured out he was skeet or trap, maybe, I think. I don't know how well he did or not, but anyways. So, unto him be glory. We mentioned that in the verse that we read. 1 Corinthians 15:57, also our verse that we use for our church. But thanks be to God which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. And really that's what we saw. We saw the Lord giving us or getting the victory in and through us. And so here's some of the highlights. We had over 25,000 tracts that we handed out. And that was far more than what we really anticipated, again, because it wasn't our goal just to get tracts out. We had a lot of conversations as well. Several of us from the group took time to speak with people and to share things and to try to converse. Obviously, we were limited with those that only spoke French or that didn't speak English, but some we had with the guys from the church there, others that spoke very good English and took the time to really converse with them. One of the things that was interesting is as we were there meeting Americans, and we'd ask them what state they're from and tell them what state we're from, and they'd say, oh, what games are you here for? What events are you here to see? And we'd tell them, oh, we're actually here through our church to spread the message of salvation. Oh, well, someone would be, well, that's really good, and others would be, oh, okay, that kind of thing. But I think there was an impact from just that, of here is a group that came just for the purpose of proclaiming the message of salvation, of serving the Lord, not necessarily there for the Olympic events. We had 108 countries in the end reached. We prayed for 100, which at that time seemed impossible. Then after the first day or two, we were already at 50, and then 60, 70 really quick. And then we got to that 80, 90 mark, and everything slowed way down because, you're starting to run out of the regular countries. But then we were able to find some of these little islands. The one I found, I can't remember, was it? Say it again. Maruti. There is a little island, Mauritius. Yes. I might have texted that. I don't remember if I sent that to the group or not. Mauritius, it's a little island to the west of Madagascar, off the coast of Africa, and it is tiny. And I was walking up the escalator, and a guy that just was one of the volunteers for the Olympics said, hey man, I got something for you here. He's like, oh, thank you so much, and really appreciate it. He says, I'm actually from Mauritius. I say, come again? Mauritius. I said, hold on a second. And I got my phone out and I said, can you spell that for me? I don't want to miss this because I have never heard of that and I don't know where it is. And so we talked a few minutes as we were heading up to the train, but that was, again, just the way the Lord works, right? I didn't know he was, I just assumed he was French as being in the uniform of the Olympic scenario, helping out and things of that sort. But we had multiple testimonies, as Karis mentioned, multiple prayers that were answered where people were praying for a specific country, and God that day allowed us to be able to meet somebody from that country and connect with someone. So it was really neat how God worked over and beyond. I didn't get this right because I forgot about the one that Judah met. But you met a boxer from somewhere. Couldn't remember though what it was. A Central American country, I thought it was. But anyways, we ended up in the end, 3 American athletes. Jaden ran into two skateboarder guys, and my wife ran into the shooter guy that we had a picture of. And I don't know that anybody else met any other American athletes. But then the three Slovakian that we showed you from the airport, and also two Polish swimmers that we were able to speak to. And there may have been a few others. We did meet a lot of family members of athletes or coaches of athletes, things of that sort. But one of the things that we found out when I was speaking to one of the reporters is I asked them, have you been able to meet a lot of the athletes? And they said no. It's been very, very difficult to get to the athletes. And we found that to be true. And so just for the Lord to answer above and beyond. And these we just met out on the street, met in the airport, just wandering around, doing things. We saw the Lord. And then, of course, 20 tired but joyful evangelists. The Lord really worked in and through the group. It was a great group to be a part of. And no complaining, no issues that we ran into. Everybody put their hand to the plow and went forward, and we're grateful for that. This is the picture of the group that went. So you can see our families kind of dispersed throughout there, and a couple of them from Lehigh, a couple of them from Pastor Wartner's church, and a couple of them from Fargo Baptist as well. So this was the Lord used for our Paris 2024. We're almost out of time, but anybody have any questions? I can take a couple before we need to continue on.
Were there other groups, a lot of other groups that you came across doing the same kind of thing?
So there were a lot of other groups. We ran into them a little bit, but not a lot. We knew, based with the missionary, we knew that he had a couple of groups that were coming in. There was also Jehovah's Witness, there was Mormon, there was Seventh-day Adventist, Catholic, that were all out there doing some stuff. But it wasn't like an overwhelming thing. If anything, I felt like wherever we were more overwhelming in that particular area at that particular time. I don't know if it's just because we only split into two groups, and so, there would be 10 and 10, and you'd have, 3 or 4 people together. Most of these groups, maybe exception of 1 or 2, we saw that they had 5 or 6 together in one cluster. But there were so many places to be and so many places to go. And the one time that we ran into a group that was there, we just kind of moved to a different area, a different direction, and kept going. Yes?
Why were their shoes off?
Oh, well, because, beautiful are the feet of them who bring good tidings of great of the gospel. No, we did just take our shoes off to go in the house because it had all the tile floors, and so tracking all the dirt in there would just been everywhere. So we kind of left the shoes at the front door as best we could.
And this was at the back of the house.
Yeah, and this was right in the back of our house, so everybody just ran outside real quick, and all their shoes were in the front of the house, so nobody put them back on. So I guess they really didn't help. They brought all the dirt back in anyways, but we had a broom. It worked out.
So it was mentioned, there was a learning curve in approaching people.
Uh-huh.
Can you expand on that? What happened first, and then what worked?
Okay, so we kind of found out that the French love to be greeted. It tends to be more of a cultural thing, that you have a kind of a formal greeting and more of a time. Americans, we just, hey, what's going on? Or, hey, do you know where the such and such is? And if you kind of did that with the French, they kind of looked at you like, man, you're rude. What's wrong with you? We didn't really understand that at first. And so we tried to be a little more eye contact, say something, and then kind of present them with it. And that seemed to be a lot more effective. It still was kind of difficult when the masses were coming, because you had so many people. And then even then, there was a lot of different countries there. So you didn't always, it wasn't always French people that you were dealing with. But they were just much more of a greeting thing. They didn't like something shoved in their face from that perspective. So once we kind of learned that, to ease up a little bit, to be a little more gentle, if you will, and not as forward in it, they seemed to be more receptive in that. We also found sometimes you could flip the track over, and it had the statement on the back of exactly what it was. And so when people were, what is this? We'd just flip it over. We'd show them the one statement, and then they would decide from there if it was something they wanted or not.
Did you find if one person took it, then the people next to them would
Oh yeah.
pick them up?
Yep. And the opposite was true. If one person rejected it, you just stopped. Let a couple go by and then try again. Yeah.
I know Paris is a big city and it could be like DC or Baltimore, but did you actually see very many churches while you were out traveling?
Nope.
I mean, of any kind?
No. Now, obviously, we wouldn't have. Some of them we wouldn't have known maybe that they were there, churches. I think the Pastor Baptiste, I think he told Pastor Wertner that there was 40 or 50 churches in the entire country as far as Baptist churches or Bible preaching, teaching churches. And that's, I don't know how many millions of people the country is, but Paris alone was massive. And there was not very many churches in there. So.
But once you crossed into London, did you notice? I mean, obviously you're at John Newton's church, and so did you notice a difference? No.
No, not at all. I mean, obviously you had the old, churches from the early centuries, but anything new that we would have recognized as like a church, I didn't see any of those. Now, it could have been we just didn't get out in those areas, but.
Even the John Newton's church, we missed it initially because the initial part of it, like the foyer area, is a coffee shop now.
Yeah. Even the church that John Newton pastored in has a coffee shop in the opening. As soon as you walk in, there's a coffee shop right there, and they claim to be the best coffee in London or something. So.
People meet at John Newton's church, or is it just a tourist church?
I don't. It looked like it was an operation of some sort, but.
Is there opportunity for follow-up with anybody, or was there anything on the tracks for people who wanted to follow up?
Yeah, there was that. The QR code was on everything that we passed out, and that QR code went to this website that Pastor Wertner specifically put together for this project, and it had a way of getting in contact. It also had 30, 40 languages that they could select, and once they selected their language, anything that he had found that was good material, he had put in there for them to be able to access, Bible studies to be able to take, and things of that sort. Some of the folks got numbers and exchanged numbers and things of that sort to be able to follow up that way as well. So, but that would be the majority of things. And anything that we would have found local in the country or something, we could have pushed towards the missionary there or the preacher, the pastor. I asked him before we left, and he hadn't gotten into it or hadn't heard anything yet too much from it. So I'll try to follow up with him again and see how it's designed, if it sends him the email or what it does, and see how much he gets response-wise. That would be pretty interesting to know. All right, anyone else? Okay, well then let's stand, stretch our legs for a few minutes, use the restroom if you need to. We'll transition into our next service.